I'm Kristin McWharter. I'm an artist, and I work largely at the intersection of performance and object making. And today I'm going to talk about party games, and specifically speculative models for play by working with form. When I say party games, I'm often thinking about these like strange objectives that we try to achieve at moments of coming of age, birthdays, retirement parties, graduations, and that these activities are often centered around what seems like nonsense, but is always incorporating our bodies in some kind of embarrassing or confusing, difficult way. And I find these party games or these rituals that come around parties really interesting in that they're often somewhere between fun and joyous, but also abusive, like spitting in each other's faces, blindfolding each other and spinning each other around, making ourselves so dizzy that we're sick, or singing really loudly in a way that we know will make people turn red in the face. And I like to try to think about what is happening in these moments. Are we trying to humble figures of authority? Are we trying to find heroes within systems that are designed to make us fail? Are we trying to renegotiate the social contracts that we exist within? And why is it that parties tend to be the space where this happens? In particular, I'm interested in the ways that by putting there's a piñata getting torn apart in this other one. But when we are using our bodies in ways that we don't expect to be using our bodies, how this creates space for speculative behaviors that are renegotiating our social contracts. So bobbing for apples is a great example of we don't ever use our bodies in that way except for under these circumstances. I don't know what we're learning when we're bobbing for apples, but it seems to be something worth doing repeatedly such that it becomes a cultural event. Well, in my practice over the past several years, I've found that I tend to use these, the material language of these party events, like in a few different occasions, and as well as the kind of constructs of these party games as a sort of choreography for performance. And what I'm interested in is how these types of scenarios bring to a head our desire for intimacy and our desire for competition simultaneously. And that speculative space that exists between those two behavior sets becomes a really provocative place for me to speculate on new behaviors or systems of behavior. And recently I've been looking into how these different speculative models of behavior could interface with digital or virtual spaces. And so first thing I like to look at is sort of the objects that accompany our digital and virtual spaces: keyboards, game controllers, virtual reality headsets, and what are the embodied behaviors that accompany those. So for example, a game controller, even though there's a lot of facility in how much instructions you're able to provide to a game system through the dexterity of your fingers, say, is also putting the rest of your body into an embodied experience of having your hands bound together. And so as we're playing games, what is the embodied knowledge that is accompanying our gameplay when we're bound by the wrists? And a lot of times I think we like to think of virtual spaces as sort of these disembodied experiences that send us off into the ether. But there's this uncanny valley, I think, that we're always confronted with where we live and exist inside of our bodies. And so there's a frustration for me between the physical objects of our gameplay and the kind of embodied experiences we're trying to achieve. So I've been looking at taking virtual reality headsets and reconfiguring the haptic feedback that comes with them through the physical form of how they manifest. So this project, XXOXX, is 5 virtual reality headsets in which the focal points for each headset can pull the viewers into different directions. So there's a competitive model of pulling against 4 other viewers in order to assert the focal point that you want to have inside your virtual space. And similarly, this piece, Scope, is an underwater trippy experience that you have in virtual reality, but as you're rigidly tied to another viewer, which mirrors the virtual experience inside. Huddle is a piece that takes, I think, 6 different viewers and puts them into a contraption where there's a mirroring between the huddle of the content inside the virtual space and the behaviors that they share with other viewers. And when I'm making these, I'm thinking a lot about this interface between the virtual and the physical space, and so where these seams are met. And so really thinking about the joints of the body and how those are directly connecting to the physics engine inside the game space. So if we think about the articulation of our body as having cause and effect inside of the virtual spaces, we can think of hinge joints, pivot joints, ball and sockets, springs, etc., as also existing in the physical world. So our neck, our wrists, our knees, our shoulders, these are all also part of the game space. So recently I've been prototyping different kinds of party games like Bobbing for Apples or Pin the Tail on the Donkey into virtual reality games, and creating the virtual reality headsets to be the decorations of the party. So that the virtual reality headsets are animated by the playing of the game. And I'm hoping that this is sort of creating a speculative space to think through how is this kind of gameplay changing our social contracts. And by speculating on the different ways that we might be negotiating these games or negotiating these party environments, it's also a question of, how do we relate ourselves next to ideas of courtship, competition, celebration, birthdays, and the different rituals that accompany those. Thank you.